Okay. So what is the problem with police equipment?
Well, some states do mostly blood testing, and California isn't one of them. And I won't address blood testing necessarily. Okay. But most of the DUI prosecutions in California are based on breath test evidence. Now, usually when you see somebody on TV or cops and they're driving and they're given a breath test, you show them the machine, the person blows into it, and it gives a reading, and people look at it and go, oh, it says 0.22, 0.18. Oh, the person's drunk. And without thinking, people think, whoa. So if you think about it for a second, there's something here I'm holding in my hand that's 4 inches by 3 inches. A guy blew his breath into it, and you're telling me this is measuring the alcohol in his blood accurately? And we know this because a police officer was holding it, or the government uses it? It must be true. Well, how does that work? I mean, nobody thinks about that. Really? Is there any time in a hospital that any test needs to be done where you need to know the contents of someone's blood, that they hand you, this is police issue, by the way, they would hand you something that's powered by the same battery as my child's toy. That's powered by a 9-volt battery, and say, this is going to test your blood, breathe on it. That doesn't, even when they're testing for alcohol in the hospital, they don't use this.
Well, I think we get so accustomed to the guy in blue in uniform is the authority here, and we don't want to challenge them, you know? I mean, who wants to say, no, sir, I'm not going to do what you tell me to do. You're going to find your butt in jail.
Right, and people are forced to take the machine more often because you have a choice of breath or blood, but often the blood may not be available. And the other issue a lot of people have is some people are afraid of needles. And the second thing is they're going to draw your blood in a jail. And we know that jails aren't necessarily the most sanitary places. A lot of diseases, a lot of people may have been picked up who came into the country without being screened. There's rampant disease. Whose needle is it? I wouldn't trust anybody in the jail to put any needle inside me. And so a lot of people feel forced to take the breath test.
Okay. All right. So the police officer has stopped you, applied this breathalyzer, and says, okay, you are at 0.10, which is over the legal limit, because in California the legal limit is 0.8, right?
0.08.
0.08, right.
Yes.
And so, oh yeah, 0.8 would be off the charts, huh? You don't want to be that bad. So 0.08 is the legal limit. You're at 1, so then what normally happens after that?
Well, there are 2 tests. The first thing, when they pull you over, a lot of times they will offer you this test. They call it the preliminary alcohol screening test. Now, the officer by law is required to advise you that in the field, this test is optional. Now, the advisement tells you he's only checking for the presence of alcohol. He doesn't tell you he's measuring your blood alcohol level.
Okay.
But when you get to court, it is used against you as your blood alcohol level. Then when you're arrested, you're required to take another test, because this is the optional test. You take an evidentiary test, which is breath or blood. In California, most common breath. And you take that test after you're arrested.
Okay. All right. So then the tests happen. Let's go ahead and show why you think these tests are so faulty.
Okay. Well, you know, it's not just me. There are peer-reviewed scientific journals that discuss these, and a lot of world-renowned scientists that have talked about these machines and why. Now, the first issue we have, and the biggest issue, is we're measuring someone's breath and using that measurement to make a determination as to what the alcohol level in their blood is. Now,
so you're saying that's faulty science, though?
Well, there's no one-size-fits-all for that determination. The thing is, everybody's different, and we know that everybody metabolizes alcohol, drugs, or any chemical differently. Everybody does. And the amount of alcohol in your blood has been proven to not always be directly proportional to the amount of alcohol in your breath as the government has led you to believe.
Okay.
So for example, I've cross-examined Los Angeles County Sheriff's experts on the breath machine, and they have admitted under oath that if you are at a 0.16, twice the legal limit, it's possible that a reading of 0.16 on here is so far off that your blood was actually at 0.07. You were actually twice legal limit on the reading on the breathalyzer when you were actually innocent.
Okay.
And this is because the proportions, the ratios vary between blood and breath, and these have been proven. Now in court, when we're challenging the charge of being over 0.08, we're not allowed to discuss that.
Oh.
That's hidden, that's excluded from the jury making any assessment based
Why
on
is that excluded?
Well, the Supreme Court felt that, well, if we say, we presume that if this machine reads that, and we presume a certain proportion, 2100, between the breath and the blood, that cannot be challenged in court. And regardless if you're a 0.07 that reads 0.16, we don't care.
Okay, so they're just going to go by the reading, regardless.
Right.
Okay.
And on a proportion from breath to blood that was determined by a committee. It's not necessarily applicable to everybody.
How do you win your cases in court when they have to go by that reading?
Well, when we get into court, one of the big issues is this machine. Now, this machine, part of the issue is when you're trying to measure, this machine is, the theory behind it is you're going to measure air from deep in the lungs. Well, the problem is they put this tube in here, and when you blow into the tube, the measurement is determined. Now, they changed this tube because there may be residue on the inside.
Residue from what?
From just blowing, and
okay.
air sticks to the side.
Okay.
Now, obviously, the bigger problem would be you can't change the airway that the air came from.
Right.
And we know for a fact that as you're breathing in and out, alcohol from your breath deposits on the lining of your airways.
Okay.
And when the officer tells you to take a deep breath, you're going to flush more of that alcohol out than you normally do. And the exchange of alcohol in your breath with the lining of your airways, which have mucus and water, those interactions are actually very complicated. So to actually just say, well, we're measuring it with this machine is actually flawed. Just
you're saying it's a little simplistic then.
Yes.
Okay. So you've said that easy things like breath spray, soy sauce, and I think I see a tube of toothpaste down there.
Yes.
Those things can show kind of off the chart readings.
Yes. Let's do one here. Let's power some of these up. These are used by the Highway Patrol throughout California, Los Angeles County Sheriffs locally. Now, I haven't had any alcohol. I've just been playing with these all day.
Okay.
So we'll see what it reads.
Well, we couldn't follow you around all day with a camera to prove that.
Yeah,
so we'll take your word for it.
But I'm going to test to prove that I'm at 0.
Okay.
Let's see.
Okay. And how long does it take usually? Oh, there it is.
Oh, we're at 0. I don't know if the camera can see that.
Yeah. Well, I can see it, and it says, okay.
0?
Yes, they can read it.
Now, what we're going to do is here's a standard inhaler for somebody who has asthma.
Wow. Even an inhaler, you got to watch
Now we're going to give it a shot.
Okay. Now we're going to wait a few seconds to see what the inhaler reading shows. And that should come up here any second. So 0.4.
0.04. 0.04.
Oh, 0.04. Okay, which is half.
And this is
of the
just
legal
taking
limit.
just taking medicine.
Yeah, this is one puff of the inhaler.
Right, and I inhaled it, and it's still, because it's on the airways, it still reads on the machine.
Okay, very interesting.
And so when these things, that just demonstrates another problem, is the mouth and things you blow out of your mouth when you're blowing into the breathalyzer. For example, everybody may have food stuck in their mouth, they may have cavities, And so anything that deposits in the mouth, for example, food can be stuck in your teeth. And if you consume an alcoholic beverage, alcohol can be stuck on the food or in cavities. And when you blow out, the things in your mouth go into the machine. Now, one major problem with the machine is a lot of these breathalyzers measure, for the test, they measure 1 milliliter of air, which is very minuscule. But when the results are given, to give the results, they multiply that by 210,000
milliliters.
Well,
times. Okay. The 1 milliliter times the,
gets 210,000 milliliters. So when you multiply something and you have a little bit of error or a little bit extra alcohol in the sample, you're multiplying that error by 210,000. And that sample you're taking, that 1 milliliter for, it's sort of like sampling a small town in Oklahoma and saying that applies to the whole United States.
I see.
And the other problem is that taking such a small sample of all the air in the airways, you have to assume, or they assume, that that sample is at equilibrium, or there's a complete mixture of alcohol and air, and you're getting a sample that's representative of all the air.
Of the entire
which is not
amount of air.
Which can't be proven.